awkward that, in the present climate, referring mind-controlled victims to mental health professionals for treatment would be tantamount to subjecting a patient needing delicate surgery to a surgeon who was blindfolded and handcuffed. The subsequent lives of the threesome has been one filled with trauma, death threats and legal battles. Kelly is now effectively a political prisoner in a mental institution because of her suicidal tendencies and is not allowed to have contact with Phillips, one of the few people who could help her to regain her sanity. All requests for legal investigations into the claims made by them to the legal authorities have been prevented for reasons of national security, despite the mass of verifiable evidence which they have been able to uncover. This is due to the loopholes created by the National Security Act, 1947 and the 1986 Reagan Amendment, which means that the government can censor and/or cover up anything in the interests of national security. The extraordinary bravery of Kathy, Kelly and Mark has seen to it that this abuse and its perpetrators will be held accountable for their actions through their mass publicity attempts in the face of death at every turn. We now have a pretty clear picture of the mentality of the New World Order elite operatives. It is now up to all of us to see that such sacrifice has not been in vain. According to my sources in Britain, the British counterpart to Project Monarch is Project Ultra Green and was initiated by a Nazi scientist named Grunberg. One U.S. security agency, the National Security Agency, which wields the power behind the CIA and is heavily involved in the Black Ops and Black Arts, has a base in England at a place called Manwith Hill, which is near Ilkley Moor in North Yorkshire. Here the elite operate a covert surveillance operation of Britain which includes a mass phone tapping system. Try dropping a few of the code names mentioned in this book into your conversations on the phone and you will hear the clicks in the background as their recording machinery is activated by specific buzzwords, and high-tech satellite surveillance operation, which was developed under the cover of Reagan's Star Wars program. Interestingly, George Lucas, the writer and director of the Star Wars movies, is named by Kathy O'Brien as a NSA operative. Fluoride. The apathy of the public towards their manipulation has also been influenced very deliberately by the addition of chemicals to food and water supplies. For example, this happened when sodium fluoride was introduced into our water supply and the majority of our toothpastes, supposedly to prevent dental caries in the under 12-year-olds. What they did not tell the public was that sodium fluoride is a highly toxic byproduct of the aluminum manufacturing process and the refining of phosphate rock. See further. Examples of manipulation: the BSE case, which was once used as rat poison and also pollutes the atmosphere and water environment due to overuse of the aerosol propellants chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs. Fluorine is a major component of most of today's major sedative drugs and even new supposedly less addictive drugs such as Prozac, fluoxetine, and its derivatives. Prozac also contains benzene, which is, according to the World Health Organization, a known carcinogen with no known safe level. Prozac is currently the world's most popular antidepressant despite having documented side effects such as suicidal ideation, violent behavior, nervousness, anxiety, insomnia, anorexia and sexual dysfunction. The following statement is extracted from address in reply to the government's speech to Parliament, as recorded in Victorian Hansard of August 12, 1987, by Mr. Harley Rivers Dickinson, Liberal Party member of the Victorian Parliament for South Barwon. Hence the title. At the end of the Second World War, the United States government sent Charles Eliot Perkins, a research worker in chemistry, biochemistry, physiology and pathology, to take charge of the vast Farben chemical plants in Germany. While there he was told by the German chemists of a scheme which had been worked out by them during the war and adopted by the German General Staff. This was to control the population in any given area through mass medication of drinking water. In this scheme, sodium fluoride occupied a prominent place. Repeated doses of infinitesimal amounts of fluoride will in time reduce an individual's power to resist domination by slowly poisoning and narcotizing a certain area of the brain and will thus make him submissive to the will of those who wish to govern him. Both the Germans and the Russians added sodium fluoride to the drinking water of prisoners of war to make them stupid and docile. After the war, IG Farben was dismantled but later emerged in the many guises of the companies with whom they had signed cartel agreements, including Procter & Gamble, the company who domesticated the word fluoride with official encouragement in 1958 with the Crest Fluoridated Toothpaste campaign. Moreover, an advisor to the U.S. government on hypnotism and psychological behavior control, drive, George Estabrooks, later became chairman, Department of Psychology, Colgate University. Internationally, Colgate was and remains the most ardent producer and advocate for the fluoridation of toothpaste. Fluoride is active in parts per million and acts as a potentiator for other drugs, that is, it increases their effect. In 1954, Charles Eliot Perkins, scientist and author, stated, "The real purpose behind water fluoridation is to reduce the resistance of the masses to domination and control and loss of liberty, and, I can say this in all earnestness and sincerity, as a scientist who has spent nearly 20 years research into the chemistry, biochemistry, physiology and pathology of fluorine, any person who drinks artificially fluorinated water for a period of 1 year or more will never again be the same person, mentally or physically." Interestingly, the chemical industry now has a mass market for one's hard to dispose of toxic waste material, and the Illuminati have a sedated and more easily controlled population. A microchip population. In the elite's misguided judgment, the ideal form of control will be via microchip population. Connected to a global computer, money will be obsolete and all financial transactions will be carried out via a microchip inserted under the skin, used in much the same way as a credit or smart card. Swipe your wrist over the sensor to pay for your goods. Convenient, easy, and enables the elite to have complete knowledge about you and your transactions, with no cash alternative. If your wrist is refused for some reason, you can be prevented from buying anything and effectively ostracized from society. Moves to implement this are already underway, and public opinion is being softened up to accept it. In the 1970s, Swedish hospital patients were implanted without their knowledge, beds, newborn babies in maternity wards, and criminals are being electronically tagged. A need for identity cards is being expressed, to combat crime. Supermarkets are experimenting with barcoded cards to keep a tally of purchases without the need for checkout assistance. The pay at the pump systems recently introduced in some petrol stations. And in 1994 the Intel Corporation was given a 5-year contract to research into an under-the-skin microchip for identity, financial transactions. IBM have already developed an invisible barcoding system of 3 sets of 6 numbers which is painless and can be installed on the skin by laser in a fraction of a second without the person being aware of its existence, and is currently in use on cattle. Watch out for gradual insistence on personal computerization and electrical devices which could potentially be used to control us all. Remember, they create problems and then offer solutions. Dr. Carl W. Sanders is an electronics engineer, inventor, author and consultant with various government organizations as well as IBM and General Electric. He spent 32 years developing microchip technology for use in medicine, which resulted in the chip which he describes as the mark of the beast. It is a tiny chip which is recharged by body temperature and whose prime location would, therefore, be in the forehead, just below the hairline, or alternatively on the back of the hand. This chip has been tested as a contraception device in India and as a behavior modifier in Vietnam veterans, amongst other things. A specific identification chip was developed which contained details of a person's name, picture of their face, security number, fingerprint, physical description, family history, address, occupation, income tax information and criminal record. Dr. Sanders admits to attending many one-world meetings with Henry Kissinger and people from the CIA where it was discussed, how can you control people if you cannot identify them? And, how do you make people aware of the need for something like this chip? The answer was simple, let's make them aware of lost children etc. The CIA then came up with the idea of putting pictures of lost children on milk cartons, a procedure which ceased when the microchip became accepted. Bills have been put before Congress in the USA that will allow the government to microchip children at birth. The President of the USA, under the Control of Immigration Act of 1986, Section 100, has the authority to deem whatever type of identification is necessary. All of these sinister ploys are merely waiting in the wings to happen, and they have been manipulated into existence with the same problem-solution tactics which have been used for centuries to control the world's population. Indeed, this interesting passage from the book of Revelation in the Christian Bible does appear to prophesy something similar to the human microchip coding system. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Revelation 13:16-18. As well as messages from the chip to the computer, messages can also be sent the other way, in much the same way as satellite TV receivers can be programmed remotely. As long ago as 1966, a CIA psychologist was talking about brain control through two-way communication between an implanted brain and a computer. Once a chip has been inserted, there will be no end to the aspects of our lives which can be controlled: birth control, programmed actions to create more problems demanding solutions, etc. A robot society will have been created. Watergate, Iran-Contra, the drugs trade, Satanism, the BSE case. Part 8. Further examples of manipulation. The abuse of power and exploitation for personal and corporate gain by the visible components of the elite. Hierarchy is quite astonishing. In the following cases we have been duped into believing as truth the version of events portrayed by the mass media. Watergate. In 1972, a Republican surveillance team working for Nixon's re-election committee, subsequently named the Plumbers, broke into the Democrat headquarters at the Watergate buildings in Washington. This was engineered by Kissinger and his protege George Bush to remove the final pretense of democracy and hand complete control of the U.S. administration to the elite. As head of the State Department and the National Security Council, Kissinger effectively ran the Nixon presidency. The Plumbers were agents working for the White House Special Investigations Unit, created by Nixon. Kissinger, with money from the President of Bush on Pennzoil and other business associates of George Bush. At the time the Watergate story broke, Bush had been made chairman of the Republican National Committee yet claimed to have no knowledge of the situation. After the break-in became public knowledge, Nixon was eventually forced to resign on the release of recordings in which he discussed ways to frustrate the Watergate investigations. The recordings were done by David Young, who worked for the Rockefellers and was appointed by Kissinger, and they were revealed by Butterworth, the White House liaison with the Kissinger-led Secret Service. In the same recordings, Nixon implicated certain Texans, which referred to Bush and his associates.